Austin, Texas is where Emily joins us. Emily, how can we help?
Hey, so I kind of have a financial/dating question. My question is how to identify financial red flags when dating someone, especially early on. Hindsight, of course, is 2020, and I recently, found myself dating someone who had their card declined a couple times on, really small brunches, and was pulling out a lot of money from his 401k to buy a house that was going to have an unreasonable mortgage and things like that. And I kind of, glazed over it and kind of like, he'll figure it out or whatever. But in my head, I knew there were poor decisions and something not lining up right. So I feel like I kind of spend a lot more time dating someone than I should. When I am told these things and find out this information, I should kind of be like, okay, this isn't for me because this is actively happening and you think it's a good idea. And I don't, and these are really big decisions being made. So how do I identify and acknowledge financial red flags?
Anthony and I are looking at each other going, who's going to go first on this? I think you've identified those red flags, don't you? I mean, just the ones you gave us. You're saying that you didn't identify them initially and now you're aware of them? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so in the moment, I'm like, I think I kind of glazed over them or maybe watered them down in my head just because I'm personally, on a debt payoff journey. I'm on baby step 2.
No. Let me tell you what's going on. So that's what I thought. So you knew those were red flags then, and you chose not to do anything about them. And that's a relationship thing. That's a thing inside of you. That's an emotional thing inside of you. I'm not ready to tell you what that is, but I think that you could probably tell us if you're honest with yourself. There's something emotionally happening to you when you see this and you go, this is not good. This is completely opposite of what I think about money, and I'm not going to say anything about it just because I don't want to be lonely or I don't want to be rejected. I don't know. What is it? That's what I want to know. What do you think it is?
I think I kind of am an over-giver, and I easily feel bad for people, so I'm kind of like, oh, maybe I can just help guide the way or, give advice along the way. I don't know. I start to think of how I can maybe overcompensate.
Did you do that in that past relationship? I'm guessing this is in the past, correct?
Oh, yes.
Did you give it? Did you teach? Did you give advice? And then how did he react?
And I actually would bring up like Dave Ramsey and, those steps and things and how I'm following them. And I kind of got the shrug of the shoulders and the kind of like, maybe, I don't know about that. And I even got maybe one time, I don't think you should listen to that guy.
So there's your sign.
So it's definitely in the moment thing. I don't know. I'm too nice. Yeah, there is something. It could be a lonely factor that you're talking about there, but
I want AO to jump in because he's single and this is a guy who's very public about his financial stances, and so he runs into this way more. I've been married almost 23 years, so look, I'm going to speak to you almost like maybe the uncle for a moment. I think you're really clear on what the red flags are and you identified them. And I actually don't mind you're dating a young man and he's doing things like that. And you go, that's kind of not what I believe at all. But you going, hey, listen, I noticed this, and this. Don't want to embarrass you. This is what I believe about money. What are your thoughts on money? I mean, I think it's just as much of a relevant topic as what do you think about kids and what do you think about religion and faith? These are all things that eventually you got to talk about anyway. So I don't think you harp on it, but I think if you give your opinion on it, say, hey, I can help you with this. I can teach you how to budget. We can go to this class together. And if a dude's really invested in you, number one, and number two, healthy enough to go, yeah, I can acknowledge I don't know anything about money and I'm just kind of doing what I thought, then I'm fine with those red flags because all of a sudden those become caution flags, yellow, and then we could turn those into green flags. That would be my take, AO. But if they're making fun of you and going, you don't need to listen to that guy, then we have a clear separation on values, and that money problem will never go away, even if you get married.
Yeah. No, and I'm so glad that you said that, Ken. Emily, Kim was going right where I was going. I wrote down two things. Number one, you need to identify what are your financial values that you stand true to. And then while you're dating someone and as you're getting to know someone, you need to see if you're equally yoked in those areas. All right. Because here's the truth. Our Ramsey tribe, our Ramsey way is different from what culture is saying. So you got to identify, is this a red flag or is it a yellow flag? There's a difference between someone who is uneducated, who needs the education, like what Kim was hinting to, than someone who just says, I have the education and I don't care. This is what I want to do. I want to rack up debt. I want to do this. I want to do that. That is someone that, if you don't line up with those values, you need to separate yourself from. Doesn't make them a bad person. It just makes them, hey, we're not equally yoked. We're not going down the same direction. Cool beans. Great. But there are a lot of people out there who are just financially illiterate. Like you said, taking out the 401k to go do a home. Yeah, that just means he needs education on why that's not acceptable. Swiping a credit card to pay for dinner. That's just unacceptable. And so, I think when we are dating, number one, we have to identify our financial values. The number two is let's not hold someone accountable and automatically say these are huge red flags and they're a horrible person because they're just not as educated. Just try exposing him to your way of thinking and your way of processing finances. And then over time, if you see he or she, America, whoever you're dating, do not line up with what you believe in, then you got to separate yourself. Ken, I'm single and I'm not here dating.
I've seen you do this.
Absolutely.
I've seen AO folks like being in serious relationships and then something that is a big value issue. How much time do you give it?
I mean, I give it a little bit of time.
And what is involved in that time?
Within the first 90 days, I identify, okay, hey, listen, do we have the same values financially? Now, again, I'm 36. I'm turning 37. I desire marriage, sooner than later. I'm about to turn 40. So my value is a little bit different. But for me, my main thing is, do we both agree on avoiding debt? Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, and do we both agree on building wealth and leaving a legacy? That's number two. The number three is, do we really, which should be number one, do we believe in being a good steward and giving the 10%? If we don't agree on those three things, I cannot be with her. She's a great individual, but she's just not my great individual to be my wife. Yeah. Bottom line.
Yeah, and we don't have time to discuss this going to break, but I'm guessing you do that in other areas of your life as well, not just the finance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here are the key values.
Yes.
And look, it stinks.
Yes.
If you've got a great relationship, but you just go, hey, this is not going to have a long-term potential, so you're out.
Right. Yeah.
I believe the word that he uses, he bounces. I like that. That's positive. That's not a breakup. I'm bouncing. I'm bouncing to the next. I love that.
Well, I kick rocks, brother.